Hello, everybody. This is Duncan MacPherson with Pareto Systems. Thank you very much for carving out some time for this very exciting presentation. I've been looking forward to this. We are very fortunate to have, in my view, the most innovative financial professional in the industry. And I've met a lot of very high caliber people. So I'm looking forward to introducing all of you to Ted in just a second. First of all, I want to address that title. Okay, this is not hype. This is not clickbait. This is very real. We've been talking for years about the difference between having a book of business and actually having a business and running your business like a business. And we're going to dig into a lot of that here today with Ted. But before I bring Ted into the conversation, I just want to remind everybody of a couple of things. Undoubtedly, you read or at least remember Stephen Covey's legendary book, The 7 Habits. And one of the habits was begin with the end in mind. You might have also read Michael Gerber's great book, The E-Myth, where he said, every business is built to be sold. It's very likely that your business, the equity, the enterprise value, that might be, if not it's one of the greatest assets you've got. Now, as a fee-for-service financial professional, you understand the concept of forced savings and paying yourself first. From a practice management and relationship management perspective, I want to remind everybody, every investment of effort that you make contributes to your enterprise value. You're not transacting, you're not trading time for money. You are building something. Yes, we want you to be immensely productive and profitable, but we're going to talk a lot about how you can build and then capitalize on this equity. Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Ted. Oh, and before I do that, I just want to remind everybody, we will have a Q&A session at the end. So I'm not sure if you've used Slido, but go to slido.com and just type in the Pareto event trigger, or use the QR code there, and you can chime in with any questions. We are going to record this conversation, so if we cover anything that you really want to go deeper into, revisit or share with your team, you'll have access to that. I'll also just ask all of you, if you're not already part of our LinkedIn community, look for me, Duncan MacPherson, and Ted Duncan, because we're both very active there. So Ted, you are a very interesting financial professional, and you can see everybody's just a sampling of Ted's achievements. Guy's an incredibly hard worker, but also a consummate entrepreneur. Being a financial professional has never been about getting a job. It's always been about creating a job that's purposeful, that serves his life. And what I love about this conversation is that none of this is theoretical. This is real. And Ted has immense, I would say, unrivaled credibility when it comes to capitalizing on enterprise value. So Ted, thanks for your patience here. Really glad that you're here. And can we kick things off by you just sharing with everybody a little bit about your background?
Yeah, well, Duncan, thanks for having me on today. Very excited to talk about this topic, and hopefully everyone can walk away with some really good information that may help you figure out how you can monetize your practice and kind of where the industry is today, because there are going to be some revelations today around the business itself that you just may not have thought about before. But I appreciate the introduction. I am Ted Duncan. I'm the CEO of a company called Oxygen Financial. The last 5 letters are XYGen. I added an O. That's how Oxygen Financial came about. And in 2008, much like you, I'm a financial advisor with 0 assets. I had $0 under management. I had 0 clients. I had nothing. And I built a business, and I'm going to talk about what I did with that business. But over time, by using things through social media and traditional media and digital marketing, I ended up becoming a national TV expert. I go every weekend just about on CNN's headline news. I do quite a bit on CNN. I'm also the Weather Channel's financial expert as well. I do a lot of segments for them, and Investopedia for 5 or 6 years now had ranked me one of the top 100 advisors in the country. So I feel really, lucky. I feel fortunate to be in this business. It's part why I love doing these types of webinars to share with my fellow colleagues the stories and what I see happening and where things are headed. Okay, so let's move the slide, and I'll talk a little bit about our path. So in 2008, I was a senior leader for Duncan, a major Fortune 500 company, managing 900 financial advisors. And I quit that job. When I quit that job, my wife almost quit me, by the way. I actually went back to zero. I was making no income. I had no assets, and this was not by design, but I had everything ready to go. And I literally started the firm on September 1, 2008, right in the midst of one of the biggest market crashes that we've ever had. So it made it even tougher. And from zero assets, the firm today at Oxygen has more than $2 billion of assets under management. $2 billion. And we never bought a practice. I did it all through organic marketing. The challenge, though, Duncan, is that I had a sleeve of that $2 million that I was managing. And I love this business. I applaud you for doing it. It is a great business. But I just got sick of dealing with clients. And I started to think to myself, I love marketing. I love helping advisors, but I don't know if I want to be on 25 meetings a week. I don't know if I want to be on 10 meetings a week. And I started to think that what I learned in this business is that you should be able to have another advisor to buy your business for maybe 2 times recurring revenue, maybe 3 times recurring revenue. So I started to talk to other advisors in my firm. And I found a successor who was interested in taking over my book. And we started talking about some valuations. I looked at things like FP transitions and thinking about what my book was worth. And we found it to be really difficult for him to get loans. And then at the same token, Duncan, it had me thinking, oh my gosh, if he has to take out $7, $8, $9 million of loans, is this guy going to be able to pay me back? And what happens if he takes the practice down? So there was this big back and forth. And I'll share the next slide, Duncan, and I'd be interested to hear your thoughts. If you go to the next slide, I don't know whether I call it a miracle or happenstance, or whether or not I learned that everything I knew about selling practices was actually not true. Because my broker-dealer got bought by a private equity company named Warburg Pincus. I don't know how many of you have heard of Warburg Pincus, but they're a $60+ billion private equity firm in New York. And they wanted to start acquiring practices. So I met with them. I talked about Oxygen, I talked about my book, and we got down to an agreement for them to be able to buy my book. And when I tell you, friends, of what the numbers that they put in front of me, I thought I was like on candid camera, like someone's pulling my leg. This can't be true, because the multiples on the business were in the 5 to 6 times multiple on gross revenue. And in fact, in July 1 of 2019, and this is one of the wires, you can see this on the internet, I sold over $400 million of assets to that private equity company. And Duncan, I tell you, the numbers were, I was blown away at that time about how much they were willing to pay for this business.
Well, and I want to get into that more in a second, but your story about 2008 is very relatable, especially when you bring your wife into the mix. My wife has a nickname for me. She calls me the smartest kid in summer school, because sometimes she questions my judgment. But you remind me of the distinction between timing and time in. Your timing might not have been great in 2008, but being that entrepreneur, your resilience, and then of course the innovation to go in 08 from zero to now north of 2 billion organically in AUM, that is absolutely astounding. And I know you had a major surge in that growth after you met me. So I think we're take some credit, maybe a little credit.
No, well, it wasn't without you. I mean, we wouldn't keep the growth like we're having.
No, I'm just sort of trying to, get myself in there. But I know you've got so many unique elements to your value proposition, but I really want to talk about what it was specifically about your business that created that valuation, because this is what ultimately we're trying to help everybody listening in recreate in their own lives. So let's get into that.
Okay, so let's just talk about what an offer is, just so everybody's clear, and you probably want to write this down. An offer, when I talk about the word offer, is money you would be paid up front. It's money you might be paid on an earnout. That could be over 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, and any other dollars that you are paid to continue to stay in the practice. So you have to look at all of those because an offer includes all of those dollars together. So if you turn the slide, I want to share with you a little bit about what this has looked like. Recently, and let me explain mine first. When I did my deal, Duncan, they basically paid me a certain amount of money up front. I got a guaranteed payout over 5 years. I got a salary to be able to stay in the business. And I have an earn out at the end of it that if I grow the business by a certain amount, the bigger I grow the business, the more I can earn out at the end of it. So there's real incentive, not only to retain the clients, but there's incentive to actually grow the overall revenue. And I can tell you that we'll get into this, but what they cared about the most is that I had systems, I had processes. They couldn't care one lick about my money management, not one lick. And in fact, I had outsourced most of the money management. I can't say that we had the fanciest models in the world, but we had models that worked just fine for clients and they were happy. And we had a very high density of ongoing recurring revenue. When I say high density, I mean 95% plus was ongoing recurring revenue. And I had great staff and I had a successor ready to go to take my business. And all of that added a multiplicative effect on it. And recent ones I've seen here, and again, all in offer, I saw a tuck-in, somebody, Duncan, at $800,000 of revenue that got an all-in offer for 5.5 million. Let's go to the next one. I just want to show you a couple of these. A hybrid RIA, part broker dealer, part RIA, multi-custodial clearing relationship, Schwab Fidelity TD, 1.6 million of revenue, all in offer 12.1 million. Let's go to the next one. This closed yesterday, Duncan. An independent guy, 3.3 million of revenue, about 2 million of profit, all in offer, $33 million. Now, I did look at those numbers. It's an 11 times revenue number, 11 times revenue. But you asked the question, Duncan, he had great staff, he had systems and processes. Actually, his money management was not overly complicated either. It was very systematized, and he had a marketing engine to bring in new clients. And all of those things added a significant multiplicative effect on the value of the business.
Well, what's profound about those examples, because again, they are real, is they come out of the fact that these people, including yourself, committed to working on the business and standardization, standard operating procedure, best practices. And the people that can see the value in that get to these multiples because they understand the trajectory and where it's all going. And what's profound is I've known you for a while now. Since your event happened, you found another gear. The liberation that this provided created a 2.0 TED. You love what you do. And I'll just plant a seed for everybody. If anybody wants to get out in front of, whenever your liquidity event, you've got it scheduled in your mind as an aspiration, I want you to talk to Ted. So you don't need to reinvent the wheel and you can be a shining example and not leave any money and opportunity on the table, especially if you plan to stick around after the liquidity event, because I'm telling you, you too will find another gear. But now, Ted, let's keep digging deeper. Let's go into your next example, and I'm going to ask you a couple of questions.
All right. There's just two more I think I have on here to show you. A 6.1 million IBD was $45 million, and I think I have one gigantic one on here. Oh no, I didn't put it on. There's one I had for that was about 30 million of revenue, Duncan, that sold for 300 million. So just massive numbers. So I think for all of you, and we'll get into some of the details about what you need to be looked for. If we switch the slide here, you know, you've got an opportunity here. We are in unique times, and much like you would give advice to your clients, you have to ask yourself, is it time for me to take some chips off the table. That doesn't even mean necessarily you'd sell your whole business. We're going to talk about it in a minute. But interest rates are incredibly low. Liquidity out there is at an all-time high. Private equity companies and large companies have tons of dollars right now. Yes, you're a financial advisor, but is this your moment to think differently about your business and potentially do what you do for your clients? Give yourself the peace of mind that you could wake up every single day and you never have to worry about money coming in. And Duncan, when I exited, yes, I'm in 2.0 right now because I never knew what it was like to be free, to be thinking about all the things that I could do, because like every other client that I serviced, I'm like, I need to make sure my retirement's going to be okay. But once I made that transaction, I'm like, okay, well, if I don't want to work again, I don't have to, but I love working. I love doing this stuff. And now I'm able to create even more businesses and more wealth for other people. And I think I'll create more wealth for myself.
Well, and that's what's profound is we always talk about your clients aspiring to a work optional lifestyle and being in a mindset where they don't have to go to work. They want to go to work. They get to go to work. It's so fulfilling. And so your congruency and credibility has landed you right there. But what I want to do is I want to talk about that mindset and talk about some commonalities of those big success stories. Anybody who's sold a home before, the biggest wins favor those who are the best prepared. So if you were to, you don't want to list and show your home tomorrow. You want to take several months decluttering, staging the home, making sure that the curb appeal is impeccable, and that when somebody walks into that house, they say to themselves, I want this. So simplistically, what we tell teams to do is frame their staging and their preparation around three specific things: the people, and that includes redundancy and skill and credentials. So the people, the practice in terms of the client experience, standard operating procedure, and the process. The process, to your point about not having a sophisticated wealth management model, what you did have, and what I'm sure all these other examples had, was a panoramic and all-encompassing process that made those clients sticky. Okay, so I know you get a lot of referrals. You are referable. I know you've got second and third generation clients, and because you cater to those dynastic realities. I also know you're very attractive to a very attractive client, business owners, professionals, and executives, that proverbial millionaire next door. These are all intellectual properties, X factors that contribute to those multipliers. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, 100%, and I think one of the things you may underestimate, and again, you don't always see this in a business valuation, is the money not only you invest, like Duncan mentioned, in your people, but also your brand. Most of you have very sticky practices anyway, but there's significant value to these private equity companies and you having processes that are turnkey, having people that are tied into your practice and your brand that can basically be a marketing engine to bring in more business. Those can all add a significant top end multiple when a company is thinking about buying you. Let's turn the slide here, and I want to talk to you about some things to be thinking about, because I know everything you just heard. You're thinking there's no way this is true. When I did the deal, I called my first boss that ever brought me in the business. I flew to his city. I showed him the whole agreement that we went through, and he said more than this. He said, like, there's no way this is what true. And then I showed him the numbers, and he was just blown away by it. So let me tell you a little bit about what you need to be thinking about if you want to get to that level, or if you're at that level and you're thinking about it, what it should look like. So let's switch a slide, and I'll show you here. So the first thing you need to know is that this is not fantasy. This is actual reality of the marketplace today. It would be criminal for you to sell your practice to another advisor for 2 to 3 times. You will be doing yourself a disservice, a real disservice. Now, I can't say you have to make sure there's a fit for the clients and that, because I know you care about your clients, but most of the firms all in are 5 to 7 top line revenue. Once you're north of about $1 million of profit, the numbers can get better. And if you're a multi-million-dollar profitable business, the numbers could be up like you saw in one of those deals at 11 times. Sometimes the private equity companies, Duncan, they use something called EBOC, which is earnings before owner's compensation. A lot of times you'll look at your practice and you'll say, oh, well, I make $1 million. And the companies will say, well, if you're not here, we actually have to pay somebody. And if we do, there's going to be a cost on a salary level to hire that person. That's true of any business, not just ours. And then there's EBITDA. Really, for us, let's be honest, it's really EBIT. I don't know how much there is in our business. It's a lot of EBIT. And that EBIT number can be 10 or a 15-time multiple. And I do want to answer questions at the end because I saw a few pre-webinar about 15 times. Yes, the guy that just literally got $25 million wired in his account, he was about $2 million of profit, and he sold it 16 times EBITDA. Yes, okay, we are in low interest rates. These companies have a lot of money right now. And you know what? We're about as sticky as a recurring revenue business as there is. You know, these tech valuations, Duncan, they get huge, but we're like, most of you are like 95 or 98 or 99% plus retention. And outside of market ups and downs, you're like the most guaranteed thing since sliced bread. We need to do better as an industry of saying we are worth more, not only the value as an advisor, but the value of the businesses that we sell. It's part of why I love doing this webinar today is like, you need to tell yourself, I need to be at least 5 times or more when I sell my business.
That's really powerful. And your point about changing the sort of the mindset. The beauty about this industry is that many of your clients are based on demography, based on being in that sandwich, having aging parents, and now kids becoming young adults. The complexity of needs. If you're process driven, they're not going to outgrow the process. They're going to grow into the process, and that makes the relationship even more sticky. And we talked leading up to this about other sectors in the marketplace. Property and casualty insurance companies are also seeing these big multiples because of the stickiness. So this is by design, it's engineered. So let's keep going.
All right, let's go on the next slide on here. So one of the things that you might be worried about, and by the way, I was shaking my boots a little bit the day that I signed it because I had to actually become an employee of a private equity company. If you ever watch Shark Tank, you may be thinking to yourself, are these folks sharks? But at the end of the day, they have a ton of cash to deploy. And the number one thing I want to stress in today's webinar, Duncan, is that they don't want to run your business. They don't want to change what you do with your staff, or they don't want to change the process that you have with clients. It's working, which is why they want to run your business. But like Duncan mentioned, the more that your people are the right people, the more that you have the right processes, and actually to a degree, outsourcing money management is actually can be a better thing than you having some real sophisticated process on how you do it. It actually isn't as interesting. What's interesting to these companies is repetitive, consistent cash flow. I thought I was gonna have to go to meetings and like wear a tie. I'd have to be at like huddle meetings every week. And, you know, 2 years later, I basically seen the folks one time. I was beginning to think they don't like me, you know, but the thing is, I make a money. I make a money. And when you make money, like you see on shows in Shark Tank, you know, they're just there to help you shepherd along the business. At the same token, if you're bad at hiring staff, or you don't know how to have a successor, like you're a solo practitioner, they can help you find that successor, whether you're going to stay in the business for 3 years or you want to work for another 15 years. You don't have to get out. So it's just very interesting. I really thought, you know, once I signed that paperwork, they're going to be like, you got to fly out, Duncan, you got to beat these things. They don't care. They want you to do what you do well, which is run your business.
And it's, again, not to oversimplify it, we're going to get into our checklist toward the end, but the fact that the business is not at the mercy of maverick talent, nobody's winging it, and the kind of advisors and enterprises they like, these are not transactional. There's no salesmanship. They're not out pitching product. They have a process in place. They have engagement from clients, and they're driven by stewardship. That's very consistent.
One of the things they loved about our business, and we can change the slide, is they love the fact, Duncan, that I was doing fee-based planning via a monthly credit card system, and I have been since 2008, way before people were doing it in this industry. and I had $2 million a year in credit card fees. I was like, you run the slot machine every day. It was unbelievable. But what I can tell you was really interesting about my deal, and I want you all to consider this, because you tell a lot of your business owners, maybe it's time to de-risk or take some chips off the table. You don't have to sell your whole business. If you're 50 years old, I was 49 when I sold mine. I was like, I don't know if I'm ready to get out of this thing. And Duncan mentioned like TED 2.0. I was like, I love doing Oxygen. I love helping my advisors. I love marketing. I love doing the media stuff I do. I just want to sit in front of clients every day. So they basically bought the book, but I still kept Oxygen. So I still kept a very big chunk of my business, but I was able to de-risk. So a lot of these firms, they're not interested in just taking you out and making you go away. If you want to do that, they'll do it. But if you just want to sell 25% of your business and keep the other 75% and grow it like you're growing, think about having a guaranteed buyout 10 years from now from the same company. So I think a lot of people, Duncan, think they have to sell their whole business when in fact you don't.
Yeah, well said.
Okay. So the next slide on here, let's just talk a little bit about ideally what they're looking for. And this is why people who use Pareto and use Duncan, and why it's so important. Number one, they love practices that have recurring revenue. So if you're less than 70% recurring revenue, you're going to have a rough time selling your business for a big multiple. Okay. If you're 95% recurring revenue, you're like in dreamland. Having great people and having processes and contracts and your financials clean and having those systems, very valuable. If you've got a successor that could take you over one day, you're even more valuable. But if you've got a marketing engine to bring in new assets, it could be seminars, webinars, digital marketing, social media. You could have a CPA Alliance program, you're even more valuable. And by the way, if you're a true ensemble, i.e. that you've got maybe 2 servicing advisors and you're the lead advisor and you really work together, people cross over and know multiple clients, know multiple advisors, it is even more valuable. I would tell you generally you want to try to get to $1 million of gross revenue to be in the ball game. Now you could do it for less, and they're doing more tuck-ins across the country for people that are lower. Once you get to $1 million of profit, you are ridiculously valuable. So when you consider as a business owner, like how much cash do I want to make? I find that a lot of financial advisors are very cash focused. You know, I made 800 grand last year. I made 700 grand. Well, maybe you make 100 grand less, but you're increasing the value of your business, which is so much more money than the cash flow. So I would just say, do not skimp on the people, do not skimp on the marketing and the branding, and do not skimp on the processes and systems.
Well, and your point about redundancy, that is so incredibly powerful. And you know, this is probably another webinar for us to do, undoubtedly, but also outsourcing and getting out of the minutia around things that are commoditized, things that can be automated, giving yourself the gift of time, but also giving the client and the enterprise the gift of consistency. I mean, how many times have we talked about financial advisors that we tell them to get out of the asset management business? They should outsource that to somebody who's got scale and has cracked the code, to liberate them to go deeper into their branding, deeper into their practice, and deeper into their client relationships. That drives enterprise value as well.
I mean, there's no question about it. I know a lot of you might think you have a better, smarter mousetrap. You can beat the S&P 500 every year. Even if you did, it will not give you more value in your business. It simply won't. What they care about is, can you grow that asset base? Can you grow top line revenue? And can you grow profitability of the business? Not, can you beat the S&P 500? So very good point on there. All right, let's go to the next slide on here, which is a very interesting one. When you make a deal structure, okay, I'm going to just say this, and this is not to offend anybody, but a lot of us are smart because we're financial advisors. But how many of you have negotiated a business transaction for your client? And how many of you negotiated a significant $10 million business transaction for yourself? It is super important to have somebody by your side when you negotiate that transaction, because you don't know what you don't know. And when you get in the heat of negotiations, information is valuable. In some of these cases, Duncan, they'll pay a large payment up front, like that $33 million practice got $25 million up front. They're not all done that way. I've seen higher multiple ones that are a lower upfront payment and either a higher guaranteed payout, or sometimes they'll set a bogey on top line revenue growth or something called CAGR, compound annual growth rate. And if your EBITDA, that CAGR grows by 10%, you can get that much more. If it grows by 20%, you can get that much more. Sometimes they'll say, you know, we're willing to pay you more if you take more stock in the private equity company and you run with us for our next recap. Even negotiating your salary and what you get for ongoing percentage of profits, all of those are just things that if you go to the deal table, I'm telling you, it's more complicated than you think. In retrospect, I did pretty good. I think even knowing what I know today, I could do even better. And one consideration about just thinking about kicking the tires now is capital gains. I know it's front and center for a lot of you. Most of these practices will sell at 95% goodwill, maybe 5% will be ordinary income, but while cap gains are 20%, it's a consideration of saying maybe I do something now to de-risk because of cap gains. I don't know if they'll end up at 31.8% or 39.6%. I do think they're going to go up. And so even if the value of your business went up, would it really go up better, best after taxes?
What's really fascinating about this conversation for me is that your experience you've captured and invested into an intellectual property. And I love telling fee-for-service financial professionals that the moment you take something out of your head and document it into a process, now it's an actual thing that you can monetize. And so you can help a financial advisor demystify the ramp up, the execution, and what it looks like on the other side, which is very powerful. Now, one thing you said, and I want to ask this, does a financial professional who goes through the experience that you have and decides to stick around for another 5 or 10 years after the liquidity event, are they more attractive to business owners themselves, who they themselves will have their own liquidity event? Because I'll tell you something, Ted, I've seen several financial advisors get a phone call from a client saying, hey, guess what? I just sold my business. Meaning the advisor was outside of that.
Yeah.
You're hearing it after it's happened. And then the client says, oh, and by the way, now that I've got this windfall, my accountant's told me that I've outgrown you and I'm going to start dealing with an advisor in New York. Are you seeing this apply in your life and in your business? Is this something another advisor can replicate?
Yeah, I tell you two things. Number one is don't ever let whatever company you work at try to buy back part of your book. They will never make you the deal that you are going to get. What I can tell you from my transaction, Duncan, and I don't say this pretentiously, is that I've become an entrepreneur of entrepreneurs in Atlanta. I am being sought out by non-financial advisor clients that know what happened. I've disclosed this to clients and disclosed this to people here in Atlanta. And they are coming to me saying, hey, I'm thinking about doing this buyout for $20 million. And now the kind of money that I'm sitting in front of it's stupid money, because I just had one client who sold their business for $100 million, probably would have never included me. I was heavily involved in what was happening. He's got about $40 million up front. We'll probably end up getting $10, $15 million at one shot. So yes, I am becoming more well known by the day in my city as not a financial advisor, Duncan, as an entrepreneur that understands business and a guy that you want to talk to about business. And it's leading to stuff I never thought before. We're one of the leading firms right now in the country with personal injury and mass tort attorneys. And even though attorneys can't sell their business, we've set up structures that can help them with the deferment of settlements, and we're getting known just because of this kind of stuff and the media attention that we get. It's nuts.
It is nuts. There's all kinds of silver linings and unintended positive consequences that come out of this exercise. But let's talk about what you mentioned to me the other day about the sense of urgency to start getting out in front of this, okay?
Well, look, I would tell all of you, and I mean, you're watching this just like I am in front of me. We're in unprecedented times. You haven't heard a client or probably yourself say, well, just how much longer can we keep printing money? Maybe we'll print another 1 trillion here, another 3.5 trillion, maybe it'll be 5 trillion, who knows? What I can tell you is I've been doing this for 30 years. I saw the late 90s in the tech run where valuations were off the chart, and that world ended. And there were 3 years that we had to hold hands because clients had 3 negative years in the market. I saw the run up in real estate and what happened in 2008. And we saw how for another 2 to 3 years, we had to hold hands until things started to come back, at least one big year. And the window's not gonna last forever. There's only so long that interest rates stay low. There's only so long that we print free money. And part of the reason these folks can pay such big multiples right now is because money always has to chase something. Never forget that. It's never gonna sit idly. Now, whether that chases consumption or it chases real estate or chases the stock market, which it's doing right now, but the world of buying businesses is the biggest chase. It's why you've seen so many SPACs. It's why you're seeing all these other ways that companies are trying to get liquidity. Is it time this year that you just spend a half an hour or an hour to learn and figure out how much can I get from my business? Forget about doing a business valuation. It means nothing. I'm gonna tell you, it means nothing. It really does. What's gonna mean something is when you put the real estate on the market and a willing buyer tells you, the willing seller, what your piece of real estate is worth. And I'm gonna tell you is that if you're north of 500,000 of gross revenue, but especially $1 million, your real estate is worth a hell of a lot more than you think. And it's probably a good time to kick your tires.
Okay, so that brings us to a very important moment of truth in terms of checklists and where we go from here. But I do want to say something, because in the last 18 months, I hear people throw around the number of $1 trillion so commonly. Yeah. $1 trillion. It's like $1 trillion seconds is 38 years. Like these are such big numbers. And yeah, I don't know how long it's going to last either, but there's a dual track here. So Ted, let me run with our side, because we help advisors buy and sell businesses, and we have a very specific checklist. And hand in glove, yours and ours comes together. So first of all, and this is 101 stuff, you need an org chart. You need a playbook of best practices and procedures based on the rule of 3. Anything you do 3 or more times that has 3 or more steps, you've got to have documented as an intellectual property. And that's linked to the org chart of roles and responsibilities. You have to have an ideal client profile. And incidentally, I am seeing so many financial professionals grow their business down from 400 clients, where they're all over the map, down to 150 clients who are primarily business owners, professionals, executives. Because we talk about stickiness. Business owners are responsible, which means they don't take out their frustrations in life on a financial professional. They're respectful, which means they don't ask you to sharpen your pencil around fees. They're reliable, which means they're consistent. They show up for meetings. They respond to emails. And they're resourceful, which means they're going to continue being productive. They think like advocates, like me, myself. I know you're the same, Ted. I reward entrepreneurial dependability by introducing people. Like, I've got a guy that fixes our cars and does our tires. I go out of my way to steer people. He's earned it. That's the way business owners think. So have an ideal client profile that's specifically defined around who you're suited for, a service matrix to the degree that you professionalize your client's experience, and the list goes on. But that is 101 level right there. Now, I want you to bookend that with elements of your checklist.
Yeah, I recommend, ultimately, if you're thinking about doing this, you get a 1-page profile summary of your business, assets under management, how many staff you have, the highlights of the key things that you think are strengths in your business, and maybe be thinking a little bit about, like, what do you want to do? Do you want to stay in the business for 15 years? Do you want to work for 5 years and then have a successor? What do you want that to look like? Your financials need to look clean. If you don't have a bookkeeper, we set something up now to clean up your books and get the QuickBooks really in good shape. I'm shocked about how many advisors are still like Excel spreadsheet. It's scary. But you should be running this like a business and be able to have those P&Ls, because they're going to look at least at 3 years of financials, most notably the last 12 months. And then one thing I'm really surprised in seeing advisors practices is that, we're not lawyers, but you got to make sure your legal contracts are tight. Do your employees have non-solicit, non-competes? If you have independent contractors that are working for you, do you have legal agreements about your intellectual property? And I really just can't stress, like Duncan mentioned at the beginning, staging your business. Is your website the way it should look for a $10 million business? Is your social profiles what it should look for a $10 million business? A lot of people sell homes for a lot more money because they put a little lipstick on it and some furniture and some stuff in the front yard, and they can sell the property for more. You really don't want to have like a $1,500 website. If it costs you $8,000 to get a website, do it to make it look like it should be for a $10 million business.
Okay, so bottom line is, those who take full advantage of this work on their business, and they work on themselves personally and professionally, and they do subscribe to the mantra that every investment of effort you make contributes to your enterprise value. It's not just that you competitor proof your clients. It's not just that you capture money in motion as their life unfolds. It's not just that the quality and quantity of introductions you receive increase. These are all intellectual properties that there's an art and science to this. When you put it all together, all these pieces, you get this complete picture that Ted is talking about. So Ted, why don't you just close out before our questions with a call to action. What are next steps? Anybody listening in who wants to look down the road at this, what should they do?
I think if you're at any level of just interest got peaked today about what would this look like? Could I sell a piece of my practice? Could I sell all of my practice? Could I tuck into another practice? Simply go to monetizemypractice.com right now. monetizemypractice.com right now. What will happen is there's a very small 2-minute fill out form. And then after that, we can give you a pretty good idea about where you are, where the fit might be. There's now somewhere in the nature of 20 private equity relationships, believe it or not, 20 private equity firms that are in and around this business that are interested in your kinds of businesses. In some cases, you never have to leave your broker dealer at all. You stay right where you are. There's no repapering. If you're an RIA, you may stay as the RIA that you are today. It just depends on what the fit will look like for you. But if you're interested in saying, oh my gosh, this could be a time for me to capitalize and change my own family's future, make sure my clients are still well taken care of, make sure my staff is still well taken care of, it's a very unique opportunity to me, at least over the next 18 months. It could be the next 30 months, depending upon what happens. So go to monetizemypractice.com, probably take a half an hour, like I said, maybe an hour to talk, and we'll be able to see whether or not we can help out.
And one of the biggest qualitative benefits, and I can't overstate it, is that 2.0 dynamic, the liberation and order and the rejuvenation around purpose and calling. It's profound. Okay, let's wrap up with some questions. Let's go back to Slido and see what's happening out there.
All right, what's this first one here? With Ted speaking, my assumption is that he's talking from a U.S. perspective. Are the same valuations being seen in Canada? Do I have to do math conversion here on the dollars? No. The reality is we're already working with advisors in Canada. Obviously, some people are in a bank system, and that may be different. And by the way, if you're an employee of a firm, it can actually still work if you're an employee of the firm. So yes, we are seeing great valuations of RIA type firms in Canada, absolutely. Or here's one, Duncan. What does it say? What do you suggest the lead time be in preparing for the sale? Okay, there's probably two things in here. It really depends how messy the practice is. Obviously, if you've been working with Duncan and team, it's going to be a lot easier. You probably have a lot of this in place. If you haven't had a coach or you haven't had time to put this together, it could take 3 or 6 months to get yourself ready. And then the process of negotiation, meetings, getting an indication of interest, due diligence on your practice is probably another 3 to 6 months. But if you are all ready to go, the lead time could be 30 days. It could be really quick. When I said all in offer, does that mean you have to hit those earnout targets by staying on for 3 to 5 years? No, it doesn't necessarily mean that. Every deal is different. You might say, I want 80% of my cash up front, and I don't want to have much earnout in the back end, and you could still get a pretty decent multiple. Let's just say it was 5x. But if you wanted to get out to 8x or 10x, then usually it would be tied to some model that would have you on for some period of time to help continue to grow the business. Let me tell you what they don't care about, Duncan. They don't care if Mrs. Jones leaves or Mrs. Smith takes your money. Like, you're not dealing with another advisor. It's like, well, if these 4 clients leave, I'm not going to pay you the rest of the money. It doesn't work like that. They don't care. It's like they want you to be able to grow the business, top line revenue, or EBIT or EBITDA, just depending upon the situation.
Okay, I love this next question around seller's remorse. I think I know what the answer is going to be, but take that one.
Yeah, can you talk more about how they incentivize to grow after the sale? It sounds like TED 2.0. I need to trademark that, Duncan. TED 2.0 now is growing faster than ever. Did you sell too early? Oh, I really hate to admit this to you guys. I really do. I'm not going to cry, okay? I'm not going to cry. I got a great deal. But knowing what I know now, and it's part of the reason I'm doing this webinar, because you're my fellow colleagues as well. I want to see the best for you, your clients, your staff, your practice. I do believe I probably went a little bit early, not because I couldn't have gotten that deal 2 years ago. Let me be clear. The reason I went too early is I lacked information. I lacked information. Today, having talked to 20 private equity companies, I have all the information. So I know the way that it works right now and how to maximize this. Typically, you're incented by one of two things, either growing revenue or growing profitability. One of those two things is really, it's usually only one of those two things and not much else. That is a great question. You added salt to my wound today, but it's a great question.
Speaking of great questions, look at these. I mean, this next one's amazing as well.
How much enterprise value is associated with systems and processes versus recurring revenue? To be clear, recurring revenue is probably the dominant piece of this, right? If you think about the Pareto, the 80-20, it's probably the 80%. But all those other things, people, systems and processes, brand, marketing engine, that the business could run if you were in Tahiti for a month, is extremely valuable in that other 20, and it can give you a multiplicative effect.
And there is a cause and effect relationship to that. I mean, because ultimately recurring revenue is supported by client experience and best practices. So they're interconnected.
I love this last question on here. 2 silo partners in one practice doing north of 2 million of gross revenue, 250 clients, 290 million. 100% you are better to sell together. If you two can get legal agreements together and combine your revenue so you become an ensemble practice that way, you will do way better than you would do trying to go at it by yourselves. Way better. It's not even, I can't even think about that more than 5 seconds. You will do way better getting together. Just make sure you get your legal stuff together. Make sure that you're actually running the practice generally right the same way, but you'll do way better. Great question, by the way, on the silo partners. And you don't have to do it for like 2 years, by the way. If you just pull it together in the next 6 months of like a P&L, you could sell it out that way. You could sell it out that way. Does recurring revenue include asset management trails, annuity trails? Absolutely. And if you're the kind of advisor, it does include annuity trails because it's recurring revenue. And if you have a 401k business, it includes that as well. And by the way, certain private equity companies like the 401k business better. Some of them hate it. They don't want to touch it. What doesn't do well is if you're like a fixed indexed annuity salesperson and you're doing dinner seminars, and yeah, you're making $1 million, but it's not saleable. It's not saleable. You don't have anything coming in January, which is why, you've got plate lickers coming to a seminar. That's the, that's what it is. So it does include annuity trails.
Okay, Ted, awesome. Everybody, make sure you go back to Ted's website there and go through that process.
Oh, what is this?
Ted, you and I interact a lot. This never feels like work. Your energy that you're projecting is incredible, and the process you built is amazing. So I'll let you answer this next
Yeah.
question before we move.
I love this, guys. This is great stuff. I appreciate it. Is there a premium to practice has multiple locations? It can definitely help as long as you have the consistency in how the clients are served. But the reason it can help and it can add value is that if you have 3 locations, it gives the private equity company the ability to tuck in more advisors that may be smaller in those areas. So if you were in New Jersey and in Florida, now they've got 2 locations that they could put other practices, other people. So yes, it will add some value. What would hurt you is if you had 5 independent contractors working for you, and it looks like you have a big firm, but in all reality, you have 5 independent businesses that work underneath you that you have no contracts with. That's not that valuable. Like a super OSJ model, to me, it's not that valuable unless you have contracts. So yeah, Duncan, I'm glad you mentioned I would go to monetizemypractice.com. I would love to chat with you further with everything that Duncan is doing and his team to get you ready. That's already going to help you a boatload. But what a time to be able to kick the tires right now. I'm hoping this just sheds some light, may have sparked a different flame about maybe what to do here. But I think it's a great time to de-risk whether you do some of it or all of it at monetizemypractice.com.
And the quality of people that attend a webinar like this are lifelong planners. So they buy into this philosophically. So get out in front of this. No matter what your timing is, every investment of effort will contribute to your liquidity event. So Ted, let's stay active on LinkedIn. Everybody join us on LinkedIn. Look for Ted Duncan, an essential follow. And clearly we're going to do more of this. We're going to do a podcast coming up. We'll go even deeper. And I can't wait to see some of the success stories that come out of this. Okay, so Ted, I know you're a busy guy. Thanks for your time. Everybody listening in, thanks for being here. A recording will be made available. And until next time, make it a great day.